come into our yin energy. So, moderated by Dr. Nadine De La Rosa, the Values Leadership Connection with Dr. Anika Davis and Dr. Azizi. Thank you so much. And I'm going to hand you the mic.
Good morning, you all. I recognize I was not here yesterday, but I heard phenomenal things about you all and your stories and what informs your leadership and the work that you do. So I thank you all for being here. I'll start off with a small intro. My name is Nadine De La Rosa, or Doctor. I'm still getting used to that title. And I had the privilege of being research partners with Dr. Davis and Dr. Azizi. We all went to Vanderbilt University, where we studied leadership and organizations and how they thrive and fail. And so I am just honored to be here with them and also to be here with you all. So I have a few questions. I get to play Oprah today, and I'm excited to be able to interview and kind of get their perspectives on, when we talk about values, oftentimes it becomes something that's really personal, right? I value, relationships. I value time spent. Someone talked about I would change the way in which equality looks like between men and women, right? So you value some type of equity. Oftentimes we think about it in a personal way, but it's rare that we really reflect on who are we working for and what do they value, and how does value-based leadership show up in the contracts that you are signing, and the ways in which you have access to healthcare, and in ways in which we value all types of things that we don't think about every single day, right? But we spend more time at work than we do home, right? So I'm going to get started with a few questions, if that's okay with you all. No, a matter of fact, how dare I? I want to hear some introductions. So Dr. Davis, let's tell us just a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Dr. Nadine, for joining us. I am Dr. Anika Davis. I am excited to be here with each and every one of you here in Madrid, to have the opportunity to share, not just with my esteemed colleagues, but also with each of you who have traveled from around the world. So a little bit about me. I am an organizational psychologist. So I can't just tell folks I'm a psychologist because they immediately want to sit in a chair and say, let me tell you about when I was 5. So my clients typically, I am CEO and founder of Winning Results, an organizational development firm. And for those of you who may not be familiar with that terminology, my clients are organizations. So I work with organizations to help them understand where they are headed, where they are going. That may consist of strategic planning. I've worked with organizations, some of them, they have no vision, mission, or values. Right? So when we think about what we've been talking about today, someone said it yesterday. What's your vision? And some of the orgs I speak with, they have no vision. They have an idea. Some of them, they don't have a mission. How are we going to achieve that vision? And then what are their core values? I also do a lot of coaching as well as mentoring. We talked about the importance of mentoring again this morning and yesterday as well. So just showing up and helping organizations, a lot of employee engagement, employee development, getting leaders in tune with their individual contributors and their employees, because there's a significant disconnect in today's workplace. And we're going to probably touch on this, I'm sure, but also, what has the pandemic done in the workplace? All right, Dr. Azizi?
Hi, my name is Dr. Benefshe Azizi. I think I've been saying my name is Bana. I have a hard name. So I have been working in the nonprofit sector field for about 10 years. I was leading 2 nonprofit organizations in the Middle East. My professional experience spans quite globally. I started in the United States, and then I moved to the Middle East. I'm Middle Eastern by background. And like Dr. Nadine and Dr. Nika, we all share the commonality that we are very passionate about learning about leadership, being students of leadership, and helping bridge the gap of leadership in organizations. My area of expertise is really supporting organizations with regards to strategy, organizational development, especially nonprofits. And also another area of my passion is I work in the field of psychosocial care. So in Kuwait, I built psychosocial programs for pediatric palliative patients in the hospice as well as the hospital. And that work has just translated in the work that I do now. So I'm excited. I've learned so much from each and every one of you. It was such an empowering sessions. And you know, I think the philosophy that we all have, whether it's leading yourself or you're leading an organization of 10,000, there's such learning, and the journey actually does start with yourself first. And it's continuous, it's an evolvement, and I don't think there's ever a destination. I just think there's a continuous evolution of self and the people that you take on the journey with you.
We need Dr. Azizi to go ahead and drop the book of quotes, because today she's just dropping gems. Someone said world peace, wait a minute. Okay, so my first question is to both of you. I will start off with Dr. Azizi. Does that work? Okay. Why are values important for the leader and for the organization?
The million-dollar question. So why are values important for the leader? And then let's look at the organization. So for the leaders, I think values are guides, signposts. They are the underpinnings of your decisions, your actions, your initiatives, your projects, whether it sits at a conscious level or an unconscious level. And then when you take it at an organizational level, so if you go on a website of an organization, it's vision, mission, and values. A lot of organizations have that. We can even do a quick Google search now. But values serve as a moral compass of an organization. They speak of what the organization stands for, what's important to an organization. So values to me are the foundation of the leader's self, and then when it translates, it becomes the foundation of an organization. Now, whether that organization is made up of one, of your own self, or whether an organization is made up of like 5,000, 10,000, or 15,000.
Okay, what about for you?
One of the things, like Dr. Banna mentioned, it's so important that when we look at organizations, so when we go into organizations, we are looking not just at, so let's go back a few paces. A lot of times when we're called on the scene, it's, we want to look at this. Like I've been called in and we want, let's just say, a customer service class or employee engagement is down. We just don't treat, okay, let's just throw a bunch of pizza parties, or one company said we have rosé on tap every day. Okay, so they're serving rosé throughout the day. What does that look like? I had questions, but I said, you know what, let me focus on what I've been hired to do. You know, and it's like, what is causing that issue? How did we get here? So we look at, again, like Dr. Banna said a moment ago, we're looking at, okay, what are the core values? If you go into a lot of organizations, the leaders may know those core values, but some of the employees have no clue. They are just words on a wall or on their website or intranet or whatever they choose to use that are not being modeled at the organizational level by leadership. And if it's not being modeled there, then how can the employees live it? And then one of the things that the research is showing us, and I know we're going to talk about that momentarily, is when you look at today's workforce, and this is, I'm sure, across the world, you know, so like Dr. Banna said, she's in Kuwait, I'm in the Atlanta area of the U.S., Dr. Nadine is in Tennessee. Millennials, for us, make up the largest portion of the workforce. And we have 5 generations. And each of those generations come and show up with different expectations of what they want and what they need to be successful. I'm a Gen Xer. So my generation, we're more like, okay, tell us what to do, and we'll do it. We might ask, okay, what does that look like? But for millennials and Gen Zers and those alphas coming behind them, tell us what to do, right? If you tell us what to do, we're going to say, why do you want us to do that? What is that going to look like? How is that going to help us reach the end goal? And what purpose does it serve? And we have to be very careful that when we're looking at our values, that we don't take that as challenging. if we help them understand the why in what we're doing and make those words on the wall, meaning the core values, come to life for them, they'll be on board. That's what we're missing. So when we talk about this alignment, your employees, so many of you who in here, of course, I know pretty much everybody in here is an entrepreneur, right? Is that you? Okay. Anybody in here a solopreneur? One-woman show? You do? Okay, so for those of you, if you are a one-woman show, or even if you have a team of 5, 10, hundreds, thousands, whatever your world looks like, this relates to you. Because when you show up, as we learned yesterday, where's our brand strategist, right? As we showed up, as you mentioned yesterday, when you show up, your brand represents what's your value proposition. Before you open your mouth, people are already sizing up. What values do you bring to the table? You don't say a word, right? Same thing if you are a leader in an organization. Your team is watching you. They're looking to see, oh, it says on the wall trust, but I heard Anika talking to Banna about Nadine's personal problems in the restroom. So how are we having these conversations and living out the values that we have? So I know we're short on time.
Yeah. That's true, right? Because millennials now too are leaving the workforce. They're not necessarily leaving the organization, they're leaving the people. Right? I think over 80% of folks that leave the workforce are because of their supervisors.
The Great Resignation, right, of the pandemic. I mean, it's a US-based phenomenon, but there's been a research study that was done by Work Monitor. It looked at the workforce of 35 countries. Over 45% will leave a job if there's no value alignment. Over 50% will leave a job if they feel that the values are not being honored in an organization. People are resigning. And I think the Great Resignation said, I'm not willing to give up my health. We talked about health yesterday. I'm not willing to work under poor leadership and poor management. So for emerging and current leaders, yes, values can look great on a website, but how is that value being translated in your policies, in your procedures, in your culture? We talk about health. We don't even have systemic paid leave, right? And these are core issues that organizations need to start addressing because it's value-driven decision, and it's value-driven leadership.
Yeah, no, you're right. Okay, that transitions into the next question. What does the literature say about value-based leadership behaviors? Dr. Davis, we want to put this back to you.
So rather than taking us to an academic lecture series for the next 40 minutes, last year, so we've done some LinkedIn Live. So if you check out my page, Anika Davis, well, we don't have the slide up, but our cards are in the back, and you can check me out on LinkedIn. And we did about 2 hours last year on LinkedIn talking about the theoretical frameworks, the theory. When you look at values-based leadership, it's based in servant leadership. Anyone ever heard of that? Servant leadership. Yesterday, we learned about authentic leadership, right? And that frame of looking at it through the lens of The Office, most of us are familiar with that show, right? It's easily accessible. So it made it very easy for us to understand ethical leadership. And there is a spectrum when you think about ethics, and what people consider ethical varies person to person. The main thing that we want to think about when we think about values-based leadership is all of those coming together. One of my favorite things that I love to study is transformational leadership. Has anybody ever heard of that terminology? So there's transformational leadership and there's transactional leadership. Heard of transactional leadership? And in my idea, my mindset, and my studying, we need a balance of transformational and transactional leadership. Anybody remember? Okay, so I'm going to date myself here. I Love Lucy. Okay. Do you remember the famous episode with the candy line where she and, okay. And then the conveyor belt was going and they were like, yeah, we got this, we got this. And then the lady said, speed it up. And then the candy started flying everywhere. So think about that. They're making widgets, right? They're making candy. It's not like Lucy could say, I want this piece of candy to look like this, and Ethel could say, I want it to look like that. The job is the same. The product has to be the same. That woman supervisor, she can still be transformational. A lot of people think transactional, that type of job will require transactional leadership. You go, show up, you make the candy, you go home. No, she can still be transformational in how she encourages the team. Great job, Ethel. What support can I lend you? I see that you are really moving those pieces of candy down that line, right? Those types of things, we need both in today's world, and we need to know how to show up as transformational and transactional as necessary. So when we come back around to values-based leadership, we need to know when to be servant leaders. Some of us were taught that, oh, you know what? I am a leader, do as I say, not as I, do as I tell. What is it? Do as I say, not as I do? And that's not going to fly in today's world. We have to show that we understand the values that our employees are bringing into the workplace, but then also we're living our organization's values. And we're going to talk about what happens when they don't always align. Does that mean you go ahead and submit that 2-week letter of resignation? What happens with that? Because a lot of employees today, they're like, if the organization's values don't align with my personal values, I'm not even going to apply for the job. So how are we trying to be as organizational leaders, whether you're party of 1 or party of 50, how are you showing up to represent your brand, but also the values that you say you stand for your organization?
I love that. I love that. And I do remember the imagery of the candy flying everywhere. Okay, so this one's for you. Dr. Azizi, do you believe that values should or will change and evolve?
Okay, I'll always give this in 2 perspectives. I believe the leadership journey is not a destination. And I think as leaders we evolve, and I will say there are some non-negotiable core values that you have to identify. But I think in chapters of leadership, you can have new values that emerge. I think I'll speak about my role as a CEO of a healthcare organization. When the pandemic hit, there are some core values that I believe in, and we are a leadership team. But a value that emerged that may not have been on the wall was safety and eliminating risk. All of our decisions for the last 2 years was based on that. And we don't have that elimination of risk on the wall of core values of the organization. It's respect, it's integrity, and the trust. But collectively, we came together and we wanted to put the welfare of our staff and as well of the patient and the families that we serve first. So that was a value that emerged during a situation. Now, on my own professional self, I will speak of Benefche. I have a number of non-negotiable values that I will not falter with. But in my leadership journey, there have been chapters. And as I'm introducing this new chapter that I'm on, I actually was working in news, and I wanted to be an aspiring reporter. This is 20-some years ago. And the final broadcast of Dan Rather, he ended it with the word courage. And that stayed with me. That word stayed with me. And all the recommendations that we're going to give you today about reflecting on values and defining values, I did it myself too at one point of time in my journey. And a new value of my non-negotiable values became the word courage. So that is my value that I'm going to take forward now in my actions, my decisions, and my interactions and my initiatives and projects. In organizations, I do believe values can change. I think organizations that just keep on holding on to values, that's great. Even if you want to hold on to them and you don't want to change to them, redefine what that means in the current context in which the organization is in. Why do we still have those values? Is that embedded in our culture? Has our culture changed? Has our culture evolved? Are those now the norms that we can now introduce new values that are speaking to where the organization is and where it seeks to go? So I believe it can change. I think we should allow for their room both at an individual level and organizational level for us to redefine or define our values, and to define it in such a way that it resonates. It does not need to be words on a paper that sound pretty. It needs to resonate, I think, to the heart and to the why as to why we do what we do.
All right, it looks like we have reached our time, but as we close out, if we can in like 30 seconds, can we answer this last one? What values are important to you as a leader?
I will say the two, so I mentioned courage being this value of the chapter, this next chapter that I'm in, but the two that sticks with me always is compassion and integrity all the time. So those are my two values, and I define it in my words, and I just keep it with me wherever I go. And I make mistakes. I've made mistakes as a leader, but I think it's just knowing, you know what, I could have done better in that decision and that action, and I'm sorry. And I'm going to learn from this.
Mine are integrity and trust. If I can't trust you, I can't work with you, because I have to believe that you have my best interest at heart, because I will always have your best interest at heart. And people know that, and they can tell when you're genuine, and they can tell when you're not genuine without you saying a word and how you show up. So that's always going to be top of mind for me. I think also just knowing that, like Dr. Banna said, leadership is a journey. I think we have to have all the answers, and there's nothing wrong with stepping away and saying, that's a great question, Nadine. Can I have a few moments to think about that or get back to you tomorrow? Just be open to always reflecting and pivoting and changing. If COVID didn't teach us anything or taught us anything, it was that we have to be pliable and flexible as we think about our value proposition, and what mattered to us before may be completely different now, and be open to that.
All right. I just want to thank you all for sharing your knowledge, and I want to thank you all for being here and for also sharing, because I hear the call and response like a Baptist church. So I thank you all so much, and thank you.